December 2nd, 2026, 4:17 local time. The Red Sea, approximately 188 nautical miles northwest of the Bab el-Mandeb Strait and 94 nautical miles east of the Eritrean coast. The pre-dawn sky is moonless and heavily starred. Air temperature 27 degrees Celsius. Wind 6 knots from the northwest. Sea state 1. The Red Sea at this position is 910 meters deep. Unusually deep for a body of water historically associated with shallow coral shelves, and deep enough to matter for the infrastructure that runs along its floor. At the surface, a vessel is moving at 4.2 knots on a southeast heading, trailing a cable deployment system from its stern. The ship is the CS Nexus Athena, a cable ship registered in the United Kingdom, contracted by a NATO communications consortium to repair a 340-meter section of the sea. ME-WE-6 fiber optic cable that had suffered a fault 11 days earlier. The ME-WE-6 cable system is one of the primary submarine fiber optic arteries connecting Europe to Southeast Asia and Australia, carrying approximately 18% of the internet traffic and 24% of the financial transaction data that transits between the two regions daily. Its fault, detected on November 21st by the cable's automated monitoring system as a complete signal loss in the affected segment, had been reducing trans-regional data capacity and increasing latency across 23 national telecommunications networks for 11 days. The CS Nexus Athena carries a crew of 64. Cable technicians, marine engineers, navigation officers, and support personnel. It is unarmed. It is a civilian vessel conducting authorized repair operations in international waters under a contract issued by a consortium that includes telecommunications operators from the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, and the Netherlands, all NATO member states. The ship is operating under a notice to mariners it filed with the International Cable Protection Committee 8 days ago, and its position and mission are publicly documented in the Maritime Safety Information System. 2 nautical miles ahead of the Nexus Athena, an Arleigh Burke Flight 3 guided missile destroyer is providing escort, assigned by Combined Task Force 153, following an intelligence assessment 3 weeks earlier that identified submarine cable infrastructure in the southern Red Sea as a target category of increasing interest to Houthi planning. The destroyer's commanding officer has been briefed on the specific threat. Houthi forces have acquired, through Iranian supply channels, a quantity of anti-ship mines and underwater demolition capability, assessed as sufficient to threaten the cable ship during repair operations. His escort mission is to maintain a 2 nautical mile protective perimeter around the Nexus Athena, conduct surface and subsurface surveillance of the operating area, and respond to any hostile action against the cable ship or its crew. He has been on this escort assignment for 4 days without incident. The incident is 11 minutes away. Welcome. I'm your host at Navy Legends. Tonight, we are examining a target category that has existed since the first submarine telegraph cables were laid in the 1850s, and that has returned, with devastating modern relevance, to the center of great power strategic competition, the undersea cable. Approximately 400 submarine fiber optic cables carry 97% of the world's international internet traffic. They carry the financial transactions, the military communications, the intelligence data transfers, and the civilian communications of every connected nation on Earth. They run along the floors of the world's most strategically contested waterways: the Red Sea, the South China Sea, the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Gibraltar. They are undefended. They are irreplaceable on short timelines, and they have become, in 2026, the most cost-effective target in the Houthi operational planning portfolio. Tonight, we examine the attack on the CS Nexus Athena, the systems that protect the cable ship and the cable it is repairing, and what the loss of a 340-meter cable repair costs the 23 nations whose data runs through the fault section. This is a fictional simulation. Every technical element is grounded in documented cable infrastructure vulnerability assessments and confirmed Houthi maritime attack doctrine. Let's begin. The Houthi Naval Mines and Underwater Operations Command had been developing its cable infrastructure attack capability since August 2026, when an IRGC technical advisory team delivered a planning package that identified the CME-WE-6 repair operation as an opportunity that met 3 specific criteria for high-value asymmetric attack. The first criterion was economic impact disproportionate to attack cost. A successful attack on the repair ship would return the cable to its faulted state, extending the 23-nation data disruption indefinitely, and requiring a second repair operation estimated at $34 to $47 million in vessel time, equipment, and cable materials. The second criterion was operational complexity, disproportionate to defensive response. Attacking a slow-moving civilian vessel in a deep-water environment with a surface or subsurface weapon system required the defender to maintain 360-degree vigilance at minimal speed over an extended period. A fundamentally exhausting defensive posture. The third criterion was narrative impact disproportionate to kinetic effect. An attack on a civilian telecommunications repair vessel in international waters with a multinational NATO-affiliated crew produced a diplomatic and media effect that a missile attack on a warship did not. The attack package, designated Quaid al-Silk cable cutter, had 3 components. The first was a pair of modified naval mines, Iranian Manta-pattern bottom mines that had been adapted with a remotely activated firing circuit and a shaped charge secondary warhead, specifically designed to sever a cable laid on the seafloor. These had been emplaced 34 days earlier by an IRG sea-directed dive team operating from a commercial fishing vessel in the area where the cable fault was located. The mines were resting on the seabed at 847 meters depth, positioned 40 meters on either side of the cable's known routing. Their remotely activated firing circuits had been dormant since emplacement. The second component was a single Houthi Samad-3 long-range drone, a one-way attack drone with a 1,700-kilometer range and a 30-kilogram warhead, launched from a position in the Houthi-controlled highlands southwest of Sana'a. The Samad-3 had been pre-programmed with the Nexus Athena's projected position at 417, based on the ship's publicly filed notice to mariners and its documented operational speed of 4.2 knots. The third component was a 4-boat Boghammar fast assault team, holding at a staged position 31 nautical miles to the east behind a commercial Dow cluster, carrying IRGC-supplied anti-ship rocket launchers and a dive team with 2 additional tethered shaped charges designed for hull application against a stationary or slow-moving vessel. The 3 components were designed to work in sequence. The Samad-3 drone would engage the destroyer's defensive attention and ammunition inventory at maximum range. The Boghammar assault team would execute a surface approach against the cable ship under cover of the drone engagement, and the seabed mines would be remotely triggered at the moment the cable ship's repair deployment system was passing through their position, severing the freshly laid replacement cable section before it was sealed to the existing cable ends. At 4:06, the Samad-3 launched from its inland position and began its 74-minute transit toward the destroyer's projected position. At 4:07:30, the 4 Boghammar craft departed their staged position at 38 knots on a direct intercept heading for the Nexus Athena. At 4:14:11, the destroyer's AN/SPS-73 surface search radar acquired 4 fast small craft contacts at 19.4 nautical miles, bearing 097 degrees, speed 37 knots, closing rapidly. The watch supervisor called the tactical action officer at 4:14:17. 4 Boghammar pattern contacts at high speed. Attack profile. At 4:14:22, the destroyer's AN/SLQ-32 electronic warfare system detected the Samad-3 drone at 31 nautical miles, bearing 201 degrees, altitude 180 meters, speed 210 kilometers per hour. The drone's radar altimeter emission a detectable signal at that range. 2 simultaneous threats, surface and air. The commanding officer was in combat at 4:14:31. He made his threat assessment in 6 seconds. The Samad-3 was the higher priority engagement because its warhead, while small, could damage the destroyer's sensors or weapon systems. The Boghammar team was secondary, slower to impact, engageable by the MH-60S helicopters. He called it at 4:14:37. SeaRAM engage Samad-3 bearing 201. Both MH-60S launch immediately. Engage surface contacts bearing 097. Mk-110 on standby for surface engagement. All stations weapons free. The SeaRAM. The RIM-116C Rolling Airframe Missile System acquired the Samad-3 at 4:15:44 and fired a single round at 4:15:49. The RAM missile intercepted the Samad-3 at 4:16:02 at a range of 8.4 nautical miles. The drone's 30-kilogram warhead detonated in the fireball of the intercept. Air threat neutralized. The two MH-60S helicopters were airborne at 4:15:01, 24 seconds after the scramble order. An exceptional launch time achieved because both had been at hot standby since 2200 the previous evening, under the commanding officer's standing order for the escort mission. Each helicopter vectored toward the 4 Boghammar contacts, now at 13.6 nautical miles from the Nexus Athena, closing at 37 knots. At 4:15:48, the Nexus Athena's bridge team received the destroyer's warning broadcast on Channel 16. Cable ship Nexus Athena, this is U.S. Navy warship. You have fast attack craft inbound, bearing 097, range 11 nautical miles. Recommend you cease deployment operations immediately and prepare for emergency maneuvering. The Nexus Athena's master acknowledged at 4:15:52 and ordered an immediate halt to the cable deployment sequence. The ship's cable deployment system was stopped and the cable was secured in its laying sheave. The master ordered emergency power to the main propulsion and began accelerating from 4.2 knots toward the ship's maximum speed of 14 knots. At 4:16:41, with the Nexus Athena accelerating to 9 knots on its emergency power sequence, the Houthi Underwater Operations Command transmitted the remote activation signal to the two Manta-pattern mines, resting 847 meters below on the seabed. The signal reached the mines at 4:16:44, propagating through the water column at 1,500 meters per second from a remote trigger transmitter that had been pre-positioned on the seabed as part of the original mine emplacement. Both mines activated their firing circuits. The activation logic required a cable contact trigger, a pressure sensor that would detect the passage of the cable repair deployment system overhead before initiating the shaped charge detonation sequence. The shaped charge was designed to project a copper jet upward through the water column to sever the cable at the seafloor. The cable deployment had been stopped 28 seconds earlier. The deployment system was no longer passing over the mine positions. No cable contact trigger signal was generated. Both mines remained armed, but did not detonate. Their activation logic had been based on the assumption that the cable deployment would be in progress at 4:17. Consistent with the 4.2 knot operational pace the ship had been maintaining for 4 days. The 28-second halt of the deployment system had defeated the mine attack. The MH-60S helicopters reached the Boghammar contacts at 4:17:44. Engaging from 1,400 meter standoff with the M197 20mm cannon. The lead helicopter achieved multiple hull impacts on the first Boghammar in its initial 30-round burst at 04:17:52, disabling one engine and reducing the craft's speed from 37 to 18 knots. The second burst at 4:17:58 achieved a fuel tank penetration. The first Boghammar slowed to a halt, and the crew abandoned the burning craft at 4:18:04. The second helicopter engaged the second and third Boghammar simultaneously, splitting its fire between the two contacts at 04:18:01. The second Boghammar took engine damage and stopped. The third absorbed fragmentation damage to its hull but maintained speed, altered course 40 degrees north, and accelerated away from the engagement area. The fourth Boghammar, observing the engagement from 800 meters behind the lead craft, executed an immediate course reversal and fled east at maximum speed. At 4:18:19, the second helicopter engaged the fleeing third Boghammar with a second burst at 1,100 meters, achieving hull hits that disabled both outboard motors. The third Boghammar drifted to a halt. Crew visible on deck, no hostile action. The fourth Boghammar continued east and was not engaged. It had opened the range beyond the helicopter's effective standoff and was heading toward the Yemeni territorial water boundary at 39 nautical miles. The commanding officer made the pursuit calculation. pursuing a single fleeing craft toward the Yemeni territorial boundary in darkness at 4:18, with a helicopter that had expended a significant portion of its available cannon ammunition, was not a proportionate or operationally sound use of his remaining assets. He recalled the second helicopter and tasked it to maintain surveillance of the fleeing craft until it entered Yemeni waters. The destroyer dispatched its rigid hull inflatable boat at 4:19 to approach the 3 disabled Boghammar craft. 2 confirmed stopped, 1 drifting, and assessed the status of their crews. The RHIB team reached the first craft at 4:27:14. 3 Houthi crew members in the water. Life jackets inflated, the craft burned to the waterline. The second craft, 4 crew members on deck, craft disabled but afloat, crew cooperative. The third, 3 crew members on deck. All 10 recovered personnel were transferred to the destroyer and placed in medical evaluation. 2 with fragmentation injuries from the cannon engagement, 8 uninjured. The RHIB team's inspection of the second and third craft confirmed the anti-ship rocket launcher mounts and the tethered shape charges for hull application. The Nexus Athena had been the specific intended target of the assault team, not the destroyer. The mines on the seabed remained armed. This was the most operationally significant residual threat of the engagement, and it was addressed with the full weight of the task force's assets, beginning at 0432. The destroyer's SQS-53C hull-mounted sonar, operating in active mode since the threat assessment at 4:14, had not detected the Manta-pattern bottom mines at 847 meters depth. They were resting directly on the sediment, acoustically indistinguishable from the seafloor return at that depth with the destroyer's surface-optimized sonar geometry. The mine detection problem was referred at 4:32 to the task force's dedicated mine countermeasures assets. AMH-53E Sea Dragon helicopter from the amphibious assault ship 180 nautical miles to the north, equipped with the AN/AQS-20 mine hunting sonar system, launched at 4:41 and reached the operating area at 6:14. Its towed sonar system located both Manta-pattern mines at 6:31 and 6:38. An autonomous underwater vehicle equipped with a mine neutralization charge was deployed from the destroyer at 6:44. The first mine was neutralized at 7:22, the second at 7:41. The Sea 6 cable repair operation resumed at 9 o'clock under continuous protective surveillance. The deployment was completed at 17:44. The cable fault was sealed and the signal restored to full capacity at 18:31. 26 days and 22 hours after the original fault had reduced data capacity across 23 national telecommunications networks. The post-engagement assessment produced 5 findings that would immediately alter the protective framework for cable repair operations in the Red Sea and adjacent waters. The first was the seabed mine pre-positioning gap. The 2 Manta-pattern mines had been emplaced 34 days before the attack, placed during the period when the cable fault had been detected, but before the repair vessel had been dispatched. The 34-day emplacement window had been achieved because the cable fault's location was publicly documented in the Notice to Mariners filing, and the cable routing was available in commercially published maritime charts. Future cable repair operations in contested waters were directed to maintain the fault location as sensitive information not publicly filed until the repair vessel was within 24 hours of the operating area. The second was the mine detection gap at operational depth. The destroyer's SQS-53C sonar had not detected the mines at 847 meters bottom depth, a limitation that the escort mission's threat assessment had not adequately flagged. Future cable repair escort missions in water depths exceeding 500 meters required dedicated mine countermeasures, assets pre-positioned in the operating area before the repair vessel arrived, not dispatched reactively after mine detection. The third was the deployment halt timing. The 28-second halt of the cable deployment system, triggered by the Channel 16 warning at 4:15:48, had defeated the mine activation logic by removing the cable contact trigger before the mine's firing circuits were activated. The review assessed this as an operationally critical outcome that had been achieved 28 seconds before the remote activation signal arrived. Had the warning been delayed by 29 seconds or more, the deployment system would still have been in progress when the mines activated and the cable would have been severed. The review directed that cable repair vessels in escort operations receive threat warnings with a mandatory 60-second safety margin, requiring the escort to issue warnings when surface or subsurface threats are detected at ranges that provide at least 90 seconds before the threat could reach the operating area. The fourth was the simultaneous multi-domain attack sequencing. The three-component attack, drone, surface craft, seabed mines, had been designed to exploit the escort's need to divide its attention between air and surface threats, while the mines addressed the cable directly. The air and surface components were intended not to penetrate the escort's defenses, but to consume the escort's attention and weapon inventory during the mine activation window. The review directed that all cable repair escort formations include a minimum of 2 surface combatants, one dedicated to air and surface threat engagement, one dedicated to continuous underwater surveillance. To prevent the attention-splitting architecture from creating the intended window, the fifth finding was the cable infrastructure targeting doctrine gap. No formal NATO or US Navy doctrine addressed the specific procedures for escorting cable repair operations in contested waters. The procedures that had protected the Nexus Athena, the hot standby helicopter posture, the Channel 16 warning protocol, the mine countermeasures request, had been improvised by the destroyer's commanding officer based on his individual threat assessment and professional judgment. They had worked, but the margin had been 28 seconds. A formal cable repair escort doctrine, incorporating the 5 lessons of the December 2nd engagement, was directed for development and NATO-wide coordination within 90 days. This is what Navy Legends has been examining across this series with particular intensity in the scenarios involving civilian infrastructure. The recognition that the most durable strategic damage in a modern asymmetric campaign is not measured in warships damaged or aircraft lost. It is measured in the cumulative degradation of the infrastructure that every connected economy depends on without ever thinking about it. 23 nations had experienced 26 days of reduced internet capacity and elevated financial transaction latency because a 340-meter section of fiber optic cable, smaller in diameter than a human wrist, resting invisibly on a seafloor, 847 meters below the surface of the Red Sea, had developed a fault. The cost of that fault, in aggregate productivity loss and financial system inefficiency, had been assessed by the consortium's economic analysis team at approximately $2.1 billion across the 26-day disruption period. The Houthi attack on December 2nd had attempted to extend that disruption indefinitely. Its cost: 2 Samad 3 drones at $40,000 each, 4 Boghammar craft at $180,000 each, 2 modified mines at estimated $60,000 each, and the IRGC technical advisory and planning support, whose cost was not separately assessed. Total attack material cost: approximately $900,000. Against a potential extended disruption valued at $2.1 billion for 26 days, or indefinitely if the repair had been prevented. The attack represented a return on investment calculation that no conventional military campaign could approach. The cable was repaired. The data was restored. The crews of the disabled Boghammar craft received medical evaluation and were transferred to Djiboutian custody at 9 a.m. on December 3rd. And 847 meters below the Red Sea surface, in the sediment where the 2 neutralized Manta-pattern mines had rested for 34 days. The cable, thinner than a human wrist, carrying 18% of the internet traffic between Europe and Asia, continued its work, indifferent to how close the margin had been. 28 seconds. Stay informed. Stay vigilant. I'll see you in the next one.